The footrest was filthy and it had been damaged and repaired poorly. I want to undo that poor repair and fix it properly. Footrest has had a wire brush. The condition of it was shown in yesterday's video. That's as much as I can get the wire brush into some of these areas. What's apparent with it is I noticed initially that there was a bit of a bend in the end of this, and then I saw there's weld spots here and here, and this bar here is welded on back here rather than where it broke off. This has had the big ones and broken the metal away from here. It's been sort of tacked back. A couple of ugly welds, nearly as bad as mine on the top here, where that's had a crude repair. I'm going to cut these away and see whether I can get it back closer to its original shape and appearance. I don't know how I'll go, but I'm not going to leave it like that. The actual brake pedal bearing buffed up, not too bad there. So I'll grab the angle grinder out and put it through some of these bodgy welds and see whether I can straighten that a bit better. Okay, that's those areas there cut away, and this one here, this part here is supposed to join up across there like it does over that side, and you can see how much that's pulled away there. We'll join that back to where it is, and that should join up, and these should come across. There's a little bit of movement in there. I think I'll start up here trying to straighten this bit and see whether that comes back in. Yeah, so I've straightened the end there, which would have copped the hit that broke this away and welds here away. After I'd straightened that there and I'd cut through the welds, the welds that the poor repair for here, then this wanted to go back to where it originally started out, because it was welded on down here before, as you'd have seen in the earlier pictures. So I've now got this joint here back mating up where it originally came from, and it looks good. And this section here can be, a beater weld can go in there, and then I'll worry about these other spots possibly from the other side once I get this tacked into place. But I'm happy with how that's come together. Now I've just got to weld the fucker. Chicken shit welding. There, and across there. Sort of tacks that plate back in the right position. If I turn it over, looks bloody awful on the back. I might give that a little bit of a grind, but it's this pipe up this end, tip of my finger, that was broken away and was in completely wrong position. I think the back of that will clean up a little bit with a bit of a grind, and I'm done. My welding skills are that shit that I can't expect to get it any better than that. This is where the gear shift pedal goes. These are my welds buffed up a little bit across there and in underneath there. I've used a little abrasive wheel in my die grinder to buzz over a few more of the rust spots on both ends. Got the screws out of the ends here, heated them up with the MAP gas. They both came loose and in fact saved the screws. This was the bent end here of this footrest, and now I'm pretty straight through there. If it looks right, it is right. Thing I tend to go by. It looked wrong before. This little bearing here that the brake pedal pivots on, that bolt is normally done up tight so that doesn't turn. Now what happens is that bolt works loose or the bearing seizes. There's normally O-rings inside the pedal and this is packed with grease here, and it pivots on that shaft, not the shaft turning on the bolt. Now I've got to restore that. You can see the O-ring grooves in the ends of that there, that I've got to find some O-rings that fit. I'm going to buff up the pedal next, find some O-rings, grease it up. This will at least be cleaned, put a wipe of acid over it and then paint it. That's the brake pedal mounted up with new O-rings, greased up with some molybdenum disulfide grease. It's a loose fit on that bearing shaft. O-rings, like new O-rings I put in, you can feel it moving on the rubber of the O-rings. That's not going to last forever like that, but it'll do for now. Now what I've decided to do just now is I'm going to screw this to the bike unpainted and connect up the gear lever on it and have a bit of a play, see whether it clicks through its gears with the engine running. These two holes is where this footrest bolts on, and I've found some bolts and given them a wire brush and run a tap through these holes so that I know that it's all going to go together. 8mm holes, so that tap has gone in there okay, and I'll take it out and check the bolt that I'm going to use. These ones screw right in. If they're too long, they'd hit the frame underneath this nut retainer. Actual base of this is fairly thick. These ones seem about the right length. They haven't got a number in the head of them. I don't know whether that means they're not high tensile bolt, but whether this application needs high tensile. They seem the right length, and I've got 4 of them. I think they're as good as any to do this job. My thinking with this is I'm going to bolt it in place, hook up the gear levers to it. I'll have a play over this side with the rear brake lever. I've got the handbrake cable there. If I get all of this stuff sort of ready to go, I can take this off, put a bit of acid on it and leave it paint dry overnight, so I can continue on working today with it just in the raw state. So that's the gear shift hooked up. It's not clicking into gears. I suspect it'd be good if it was rotating, and see whether it clicks into cogs. I think I will work towards getting it started again. But first thing I'm going to do is go around and check the clutch adjustment, because that could be making the lever stiff. I'm round at the clutch. I've just removed that cover off the clutch adjustment. It's a 17mm, and if you use I use an impact socket that's only got 6 sides, so it doesn't damage the hexagon on that cover. That exposes a little Phillips head screw head there and a 12mm nut. The nut's a lock nut. I'll use again a 6-sided tube spanner as it effectively to undo that nut, loosen it off so that you can then adjust the screw. Bear in mind it's a lock nut, so then you can adjust this screw. Now you can screw that screw in until you feel it hit the activation of the clutch. It hits the top of the clutch. You can screw it further than that. It is actually worth screwing it in 2 or 3 turns. That will actually be pushing the clutch in, effectively taking the load off the clutch and pushing it in the direction of it disengaging. It's what the pedal does when you push the pedal down. But anyway, wind that out. So get the feel of it activating the clutch by winding it in 2 or 3 turns after it touches. Then wind it out until you feel it's just touching that activator. Then the book says wind it out another 1/8 of a turn. Well, when I've got the screwdriver sitting on it like that, blue stripe on the screwdriver there is sitting in that position. I've backed it off an 1/8 of a turn, so not a 1/6 of a turn. There's 6 sides on this screwdriver, so just be wary of what an 1/8 of a turn is. Then do the lock nut up. Now, by having a tube spanner like this, I've been able to put the screwdriver up inside that on the screw like that, and then tighten the socket up until it bites, and then this socket actually has a hole in it there, so I can just put another small screwdriver in there and give it a tweak to lock that tube off by holding the inner screwdriver in the position where I'm happy with where the 1/8 of a turn back off is. So that's how you adjust the clutch. It'd be interesting for you to note how far away it is from the activator when you first try to adjust it. I'm going to close that up, just put the cap on, give it a little buzz with the impact. It's done. That's the same size socket that you use on the valve adjuster. That's the bike running in neutral, and that back axle's just being pulled around there. I'll put it into first gear. It's still just chopping around. 1, 2, a bit faster. 3, 4. Chopping a bit faster now. That's top gear. So my shift's working properly. Upshifting through the gears there. Just before I started filming that, I came down through the gears back to neutral. I'm happy because if that didn't work, that would have been a major issue with potentially an assembly issue inside the middle of the crankcase. I was pretty happy with when I was assembling it that I had it right, and now actually seeing it run like that then confirms that everything's okay. It won't run where it is at the moment because it's not in neutral. It's probably going to take a bit to get it back to neutral. I'll rotate the back axle and hopefully walk it back through the cogs back to neutral so that it can then start again. Okay, I've taken this off the bike again, held it up in the vise there while I dabbed a bit of the acid on. You notice you don't see too much red rust anymore. So that, and then there's a bit of rusty colour there if it's rust. Most of it I think is fairly quickly converted to phosphorus. That's white foamy bits. There was a lot of that when I brushed over again, most of them get sort of smoothed out. But I don't really know what the foamy stuff's about, whether that's the reaction to the rust being converted. You see these foamy bits. It's a bit laying in there, it's probably not a good thing. Well, I want it to dry out a bit. There could well be still dirt as such in some of these crevices, but it's had a pretty good rub down. So I'm going to leave that for a couple of hours, wash any remnants of that off, give it a spray paint so that it's dry for tomorrow. That's been not a bad exercise in a repair. The repair work I've done is in this area here where that's now welded back to where it came from, and the weld across there has been smoothed out, and a couple of tacks. There's a couple of spots where it's still pretty ugly, but this is the bottom side, of course. It's straight. It's got a gear shift pedal attached, and it can go back on the bike tomorrow and be done. Well, this is what it's looking like after the acid wash and a rinse in cold water. It's we'll give it a spray of black paint. I've spent a long time working on this part. When you've got the tools, the welder and the grinders and things to do work like this, it gives you a certain satisfaction of doing a good job. So get out to your shed and have some fun.